and welcome. This is Impact 2022, our continuing conversation where we talk about all different types of topics from current events, race, religion, everything that you can talk about. But this is our continuing conversation. And as always, to those who have been here before and those who it's your first time, we ask that you type your questions and your comments that you may have about the topics that we're discussing into the comment section. As a continuing conversation, we want to hear your input. This is not a situation where I just talk and you just listen, unless that's what you want. But yeah, we encourage you to type your questions and your comments into the comment section. As always, we jump right into our topics. And some days we have guests, some days we don't. Today is a non-guest day, so just to let you know off the top. But we'll go right into our current event topic that we're going to have today. Sometimes we do politics, sometimes we do religion, sometimes we do the crosshairs of both. What we're doing today is a racial issue. There is a basketball player, professional basketball player. His name is Donovan Mitchell. And he played basketball in the city of Utah. I think the basketball franchise actually is not the city of Utah, the state of Utah. I'm sorry. And I think they were in Salt Lake City, is where the basketball team actually played, where it was located. And he played there for multiple years, many years. And when his contract was up, before his contract was up, he let the team know, hey, I'm not going to re-sign here, so you probably want to go ahead and trade me somewhere else, so I can continue my career somewhere else. And people speculated, well, he probably wants to continue his career somewhere else because he wants to go somewhere flashy, like a big city. He talked about going to New York, going to places to play like that. But ultimately, he got traded to Cleveland, Ohio. And so he can play with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And people also said, well, maybe he's leaving because he wants to be on a team that has more superstars and he wants to win championships and all that good stuff. The classic things that you hear and the classic things that a lot of other players say and players do, because it's in this time of player movement in the National Basketball Association. Well, what was discovered just recently, as he was doing an article, people were talking to him about, your playing time in Utah and your experiences in Utah and, your desires to move to a different city and a location. And what he ended up saying was, as a Black person, it is tough to live in Utah. It is exhausting. The experience that he constantly was hit with was exhausting. And that was the term that he used. The person who wrote the article, Black person as well, was able to chime in and said, they did a little internship in Utah and they can understand the exhaustingness of the experience. It's because you're constantly, as a Black person, you're constantly dealing with race and race issues in Utah because of the makeup of Utah. If anybody knows about Utah, which many people do, it is a place that is heavily Caucasian, heavily white, and which it doesn't mean anything there. But for some reason, they've had significant racial issues. And so he gave examples. He didn't just leave it out there. He talked about the fact that he was driving and got pulled over by a police officer who treated him poorly, was very aggressive, very agitated with him for no apparent reason, until he was able to show him his ID. And, oh, wow, you're the basketball player. You're the basketball player. And so all of a sudden, everything changed. And as a young man, he sat back and said, well, what if I didn't have this name recognition? What was going to go on in that situation? There was nothing that he did, according to how he told it, nothing that he did or anything that was going on. And so experience after experience, hearing a lot of negative words and negative things at basketball games. Talked about how there was, because he supported, because he was not supported, but he was against some of the legislation that they were putting out when it came to critical race theory, and when they were trying to get rid of some of the education when it comes to Black history. And he was speaking out against that, or he was saying that his position against that, not necessarily speaking out, but he was giving his position. And one of the state senators said, Well, they needed to educate him on the history, as if he needed to be educated as a black person. He needed to be educated on black history from this senator who was trying to limit the amount of education or limit the amount of black history that was going to be taught in Utah. And so it was like this. It's just exhausting living in a place where constantly he has to deal with issues of race as a black person. And he's in the minority of the minority. Like, it is a small group of black people in Utah. And so that's one of the reasons he wanted to get up and get out of there. And you sit back and you're like, man, these guys, NBA players, make millions of dollars. They make a lot of money. And the contract that you can make staying in the location that you are originally in versus the amount of money that you make going to a new place, a location, is significantly different. You're talking 10 and even oftentimes $10 million or even more difference between staying where you are and moving to another location. And so that was one of the major reasons of why he wanted to get out and get away. And then the analysis goes even deeper as you look into Utah. It's the Utah Jazz. They have a hard time getting free agents. For those who may not be sports enthusiasts, a free agent is when a person is not under contract and they have the ability to sign with whatever team in whatever city that they want to. Well, Utah has historically had a hard time signing free agents. Big name players don't want to go there. And you say, well, why? Utah is a lovely place. I've been there. You have mountains and a lot of open and free space. It's just a nice. It's nice. It's a nice place to be. Like, it's clean and everything like that. But they've had historically a hard time, and one of the reasons is because of the racial climate that there is in Utah. Going even further, just recently this year, there was a volleyball game between Duke University and BYU. And Duke had a black girl, because this is a college, a black girl playing, and she was being heckled by people yelling the N-word at her at the game. And the officials did not shut it down. The people in charge, the school, no, they did not shut it down. And so as a Duke player, she was sitting there and she was just distraught because of the fact that she was getting the N-word yelled at her at a collegiate game that's supposed to be run by the NCAA. That's supposed to be run by adults in the room. And again, they didn't directly address that situation. And there's many sports and different people who say that kind of thing happens in Utah and it doesn't get addressed. So bad that even Dawn Staley, for those of you who may know, she's a women's basketball coach in South Carolina. So South Carolina Gamecocks, they won the national championship. She had a game that was going to take place in BYU and canceled, saying that she was not going to take her young ladies up there if they're not going to be able to address these type of situations. Now, am I trying to bash Utah? No. I've only been there once. Am I trying to bash the Utah Jazz? Absolutely not. But I do want to bring to light that there are still places, a whole entire state at this point, where Black people don't feel safe. Black people don't feel comfortable. Or, as Donovan Mitchell was saying, it's exhausting to just live in a place where you constantly are barraged with racial issues. Not these, because I'm not a fan of this word, but I'm going to use it. Not these microaggressions, not small little things that build up, but big things. Hearing people call the N-word over and over again and not having it being addressed. And to go even deeper, Donovan Mitchell, a wise young man, he talked about the fact that, there's been story after story in Utah, people being followed around in stores, a young girl in school who committed suicide because she constantly was being racially harassed and it wasn't addressed. And that's the problem in Utah is that you have officials, you have people of adults people in positions of authority who do not address and do not protect our people, our children. And so the exhausting issue that the exhaustingness of being a black person in Utah was too much. And if you had options, I'm gonna take that option to get away. This is very important. And one of the reasons it's very important is because we have locations that are like this. Now, for me, I've always struggled. I've struggled. I'm like, why? I get it. I get it. Why do people want to live in these places? I mean, I get it. You might have a nice job, or this is where your family is from, or you just like being in the place. Oh, man, I already done brought a house. But I, for the life of me, I don't understand why somebody would want to live and raise their children in places where, for lack of a better word, is exhausting. Why would you want to have your children at schools that you know that they're going to get harassed and picked on, and you put them in that danger zone, especially nowadays of where kids are taking their own lives and hurting themselves, and you're going to put your child right in that situation? That's it. I don't truly understand it. But then I also respect the fact that people sit back and say, look, we're going to go where we want to go. And we're going to infiltrate and change those situations. If it wasn't for the people who, over the years across the whole entire nation integrated and took their children into these dangerous and exhausting situations, then we wouldn't be where we are now. And so, on the one end, I completely cannot understand why people want to be in places like Utah. Why anybody would want to live and bring their children into Texas. I'm talking about the whole state. Why would anybody want to live? Anybody who's black or brown want to be in Texas, and other places like this. But then on the other end, I understand that you push to not allow there to be a place or any places where there is that type of abuse that goes on. Why do you want to live in a bus? In abuse. Yeah. Why would you want to live in an abusive situation? Yeah. And that's the question. Why would you want to live in an abusive situation? I don't know. I can't understand it. And at the same time, I do recognize that people want to, they want to be where they want to be, and they want to change things. And so, Utah, Texas aren't the only places you hear about stuff. You hear about things like that still around Boston, and a lot of times in the sports scene, and it just makes you think and wonder about, how many black people are being abused like this. But one of the main reasons that we're talking about today is the part that Donovan Mitchell brought up in the article, and the part that is most disturbing for me is, you got the people in power, not like politicians. I don't expect a lot from them, but principals, teachers, security guards. When you have children in schools who are being discriminated against, and you're not doing anything about it, and then you're having people at the collegiate level being abused, being called in where you're not doing anything about it, that's where it becomes problematic. I can understand a little bit more that kids are doing, but I do not understand the turn your eyes the other way and act like you don't see it as an instructor, as somebody who's there to protect kids. I can understand it a little bit more, at a sporting event where people might get a little bit excited or get intoxicated and then act outside their norms, where their reservations, they're showing who they truly are instead of having up their reservations. But I don't understand not addressing it as an organization, not addressing it as security, pulling some folk up out of there and being like, look, you're not coming back. I don't understand that. Because what that means is that the organization, the system, everybody involved wants that to be able to continue and permeate. Pastors, Christians. Here's what's interesting about this, and I'm gonna put it out there, but I'm not gonna touch it in too much. Is that Utah is the place where Mormons, that is the birthplace of the Mormon faith. And so the BYU, the famous Mormon university, BYU is where the young lady from Duke was called the N-word. And you sit back and you're like, man, it's so many Mormons. That's such a strong and large population in the state of Utah. How could this be the place where you're getting so much racism, which is connected to hate? And so to the comment that said, you're having the Mormon pastors, Mormons are Christians, or say that they're Christians, or have a Christian connection. I don't want to get into it as far as, because this isn't a Mormon, non-Mormon conversation, but it's so surprising, or it should be surprising, or it could be surprising to see that, all right, this is Utah. This is a place where Mormonism is huge. BYU, it's a Mormon university, yet we're not only going to be a place that's known for racist comments, views, the people in charge, again, are going to allow it. And by allowing it, encouraging it. And so to the right to the question, the pastors, the so-called Christians, are participating. Or if you're not participating, you are condoning. You're allowing it to happen, and you're turning a blind eye to what's going on with people. And so there are consequences for this. Again, Donovan Mitchell, again, when it comes to the sports, you can't get any stars to come there, and there's significant stars to come there. Black people are giving a clear message, like, look, we're not going there. This year, they will have the All-Star game there in Utah. And as the writer of the article was basically saying, it'll probably be the only time that they have the All-Star game there, as the majority of the league, since 75% of the league is made up of Black people, and Utah's not it. And because they are not only, it's not it because they're not trying to address that issue. And you're in a place that's exhausting. Now, for many of us, we know this because living in the United States is exhausting. It's not just Utah. Utah is maybe to the next level or to another level, but living in the United States is exhausting. It's always been exhausting when you go from place to place. It's maybe less exhausting than it has been in the past because of some things, or that's just me being optimistic, but it's been exhausting everywhere for everyone all along the way. And we have to go back to the point of, how do we make sure that, especially our younger people who nowadays are less equipped, I'll say, to be exhausted and to be able to persevere through the exhaustion than some other generations. We definitely have to make sure that we protect and address these issues for them. Again, we've constantly talked about it here about suicide rates. And we've talked about that over and over and over again here. And a part of that, especially, and we could go through it, of how many young children have killed themselves recently, Black children, because they've been racially abused in schools. And so we have to address that. Is it okay to abuse God's creation? As Christians, do they have a responsibility to treat God's creation with care and respect? And that, yeah. The second part is Christians, we have a responsibility to treat God's creation. We have to treat one another with respect, regardless of who they are, skin color, everything, the choices that they make. treat everyone with respect. Treat everyone as if they are your brother and sister. And then is it okay to abuse God's creation? Absolutely not. I mean, and that's the part that's so disturbing when you look at a place that has a claim, a location that has a claim of being so we'll say just religious. Again, I am not that familiar with the Mormon faith. Don't really know a lot about that. But when you have a location that's known for that, that has to be an issue. That has to be frustrating. But there's other locations that are just as bad. There's a lot of Christian schools, universities that I wouldn't want to be caught at or go to because of some of the racial things that you'll hear. And so, you know, I don't know why. I don't know why, as a black person, you'd want to send your children into some of these lions dens, or you don't recognize that they're lions dens. But I think when you send them there, you have to be prepared. And I think that you have to be prepared with your Christian faith, knowing that even though other people may claim certain things, they may not act that way. And it's problematic. And I think we need to constantly address it, because one of the things that we don't address in church as much as I think we should is race. Especially, so in the black church, I think we may address it a little bit more, but we tap dance around it a lot of times. But especially in churches that are either mixed or majority white, I think that race needs to be addressed just as much. And so as Christians, we need to understand that, is it okay? Is it okay to be racist, or is it okay to be hurtful to our other brothers and sisters and still be Christian? Because people go both ways on that. They say, well, it's not addressed like that in the Bible. It doesn't really talk about that in the Bible. And so they that claim is often made like it must be okay. I mean, Jesus didn't say no, you can't be you have to be good to everybody and not be racist. Well, he did say you need to be good to everybody. And so people skate around that, and they hide around that, and don't care about the consequences. Again, what's going on in Utah has been going on for a long time. And they don't care whether or not black people come to play. They don't care whether or not, people feel comfortable or not there. They really don't care, because if they did, it wouldn't be an institutional thing from top to bottom. Whereas you see it in the politician as he talked, where you see it in the police officer as he addressed the young man, where you see it in the schools as they address and at the collegiate level, or you see it in the schools where the young lady committed suicide at the elementary, middle school level. You see it in every single part. You see it permeating through every single part. It condoned it. It's okay. And so, as Christians, we definitely need to address it more. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we address it more. We don't want to address race. We don't want to talk about race. Nobody. Black people don't want to talk about race. White people don't want to talk about race. Other races don't necessarily want to talk about race. We don't want to talk about racial issues as if somehow speaking about it makes it worse. And I feel like speaking about it actually makes it better. And if we go to the Bible and see how are we supposed to interact with other people, it doesn't really speak all that much about race specifically, but it does speak about treating everyone, and it doesn't say everyone except for the people outside of your race, or everyone except for the people outside of your group. I know that's an excuse that a lot of people use oftentimes, saying that, no, they're only talking about other Christians, and they're really only talking about other people in your tribe, and they're really only talking about other Jews in the Bible. They're not really talking about everybody. But for those of us who really know, and those of us who really care to look at it open and honestly, know that everyone should be treated. Everyone is God's creation. If we're all made in the likeness of God and we're all God's children, then everyone must be treated with the same amount of respect. And so, Utah, shame on you, man. Shame on you, Utah. Do better. But then, in reality, shame on all of us for not discussing this, for not making this an issue in our churches, for not making this a discussion topic, and not turn. And for those who continue to be in a position of power, you need to not turn your blind eye. Turn a blind eye. Do not turn a blind eye to these issues. You're letting these kids down. You're letting their parents down. You're letting these institutions down. Another comment. There are African Americans who still want to be accepted by whites. Therefore, they put themselves and their children in situations that are not healthy. Reality, they have a problem with being Black. And I'll speak one last thing about the article. It said, because this is true, they put their children in these situations because they refuse to recognize the situations that may be going on, or they think that they are different. One of the biggest stars in Utah at the Utah Jazz history is a Black basketball player. His name is Karl Malone. And what the person wrote in the article, and I remember it because I was a big basketball fan when Karl Malone was around. It was in the 90s. One of the big things that they wrote was that Karl Malone was more comfortable with people. The joke was Karl Malone is more comfortable with people who hang out and call themselves a Tea Party than he is with people who drink sweet tea. Making a reference that he's more comfortable with the extreme conservative folk than he was with everyday people. And so as a result, he felt safe. As a result, he felt comfortable there. As a result, his exhaustion may have been different. But that's the thing. As long as you are doing as long as you're doing what certain folk want you to do, as long as you're playing the game they want you to play and you bring value to them, sometimes people will give you a little bit of a pass. And so if that makes you feel comfortable and that makes you feel good, then you'll bring your family and everything into that situation, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm good. But just remember, I always think, just remember that you got a pass. You're not equal. You're not them. They don't respect you. You just have a pass because of what you can bring to the table, because of what you're willing to say and what you're willing to do for them. You have a pass. And so, and that pass can quickly go away. And so, to those people who just, I'm going to ignore everything that's going on, or I'm going to ignore what another person, another brother or sister has said about how it is. I'm going to ignore the struggles of others and say, well, mine is different. Remember, all you have is a past that can quickly be taken away. All right. Well, that is our time. That is it. I hope that that we all take heed. Like, race is something that we have to discuss, and we need to discuss, especially in the church. And then one more comment, people feel comfortable with you, you'll be okay. Yeah. That's if people feel comfortable, if you make people feel comfortable by the way you present yourself, I think you're one of the good ones. That's one of the things that can also give you that pass. But again, that pass can quickly go away. But yeah, so thank you for joining. Thank you for all the comments. Remember, this is a conversation that you should continue to have. Make sure that the conversation of race is not something that you skate around. I know that they say things you're not supposed to talk about is, politics and voting and all of the things like that. Look, race is something that needs to be discussed constantly. It should be constantly discussed. And then not that it has to be some kind of weird, aggressive, mean, combative conversation, but it needs to be discussed, because the more that we discuss it, the more situations like what's going on in Utah and the abuses that are going out there when it comes to young people will be addressed. And then you have to constantly make that decision of where you want to be. And when I know where you are, it's better for me as well. I know where you are. I know where you stand. And I know whether or not I want to stand anywhere near you. And Donovan Mitchell did not want to stand anywhere near Utah. Thank you. Please join us on Thursdays for Thursday Thirst, our Bible study, which is right here at the same place, YouTube and Facebook, at 7 o'clock. And also on Sundays at 10 o'clock we have worship service here on YouTube and on Facebook. Thank you again. This is Impact 2022, our continuing conversation. Join us. Have a good one, and thank you.